When I think of Fred Steffen, I remember his great laugh, his sense of fun, and his powerful bear hugs. I'm Sara Jo Wiedemann Larkin. I first met Fred at age 14 after my dad, attorney Joe Wiedemann, died suddenly in February 1965. Fred admired my dad, a fellow Democrat in a heavily Republican town. And Fred approached my mom about taking over my dad's solo law practice. Mom was grateful to have Fred step in and help a lot of my dad's clients who were feeling a little bit lost at the time. Fred also continued to employ my oldest sister, Barb, who had been my dad's part-time secretary while attending college nearby. And Fred and Judy regularly hired my older sisters, Carla and Debbie, as babysitters for their little trio of Julie, John, and Bob. Having Fred join our family was like adopting an older brother, something unique for the all-female Wiedemann household. And he and Judy were frequent guests at family gatherings and parties. For the next 10 years, Fred successfully grew that solo practice, so much so that he was able to hire 2 attorneys in 1975 as associates, my colleague and later judge, Tim Sheldon, and me. Fred taught us a lot about the real world after we left the theoretical world of law school. He mentored us, but stood aside as we became stronger lawyers. And this older brother of mine took my dad's place and taught me the law and also introduced me to my dad's former clients. After 3 or 4 years, Fred made us his junior partners as he made a run for U.S. Congress. Of course, being a Democrat in a well-gerrymandered Republican district, Fred lost that race, but he made the best showing of any Democrat who had ever run against that incumbent Republican. We were sad for Fred, but we were secretly glad that he was still there to mentor us closely. After 5 years of working with Fred, I left the practice to accompany my husband Ted in his overseas work of disaster aid and development assistance in the Middle East and Africa. Fred was so understanding, helpful, and encouraging of my new adventure. And when we returned home to the U.S., Fred was always happy to make calls and write letters of recommendation for my new legal positions. Over the years, Fred and Judy regularly kept in touch, and we visited each other when we were in each other's neighborhoods. Whenever we were in Elgin, there were great get-togethers and fellowship over shared meals at the Steffen household. Fred always welcomed my 3 daughters, too, blithely handing my toddlers a phone to play with in his office, a real one, all with a twinkle in his eye. And of course, Fred always had 1 or more members of the animal kingdom under his watch, whether it was an enormous but kind and gentle dog or a parrot who would talk to my girls from a perch in the atrium at the center of his home. Ted and I had a great visit with Fred last year after we could all be vaccinated and venture out for outdoor meals. This was after Fred's stroke, but he struggled a bit to find his words because of his mild aphasia. But there was still the same wonderful Fred with us that day at lunch, outgoing, engaging, and interested in everything that was happening in the world. And of course, at the end of our visit, we had the distinct pleasure of being enfolded in his great bear hug. God bless you. We miss you, Fred.